everyone, and welcome once again to The View from the Midwest. It's time for another post-match edition of St. Louis FC, so let's get right into it. I apologize for not doing one last week, but if you can tell by the decor around me over the weekend, it was not a good time for yours truly based on where I went to college. But let's not get into that because that's just opening up old wounds. They're still somewhat fresh, so how they're old and fresh, I don't know. Forget all that. Focusing on St. Louis FC, 2 games in now. The team is now 0-2, and they've gotten off to a rather inauspicious start, and it's rather similar to the start that they got off to last season. And unfortunately, I kind of think we're in for a lot of the same that we saw last season, where it's going to take this team a month or 2, maybe even more, to really get in the full swing of things, because you look at the starting lineup that they're putting out there, and it's probably about 60%, maybe more, I mean, depending on how you want to do the math, that are coming from last year's squad. But you still have a lot of new names on this team and a lot of players that were brought in kind of at the last second that aren't necessarily getting the opportunity to really form a cohesive unit with their teammates, and we saw that last year, and you chalked it up to, well, it was the inaugural season, an expansion franchise, bringing people in at a late date. Now those players, a lot of them are gone now. Some of the key players obviously stuck around, but you're trying to get in new faces, new bodies, get used to the system that Coach Dale Schilly is wanting to run. And again, you're starting to see those growing pains. We've seen it in Week 1. Week 1 should honestly have been a 0-0 draw. St. Louis FC didn't play great, but they played an overall decent game. They should have gotten a goal, or should have gotten at least a scoreless draw out of that. But unfortunately, they couldn't, and they gave up the goal in stoppage time of all times. I mean, basically right at the death. So that was just a bit of bad luck. They come out tonight against LA Galaxy 2, and in the first half they really looked fairly good for about 40 minutes, and this seemed to be kind of something that they would do last season as well, where they would put together stretches where they looked incredibly good, or at least decent, somewhere in that range, and then all of a sudden there would just be something that would happen that would throw a wrench in the cog, and everything would just fall apart from there, and that's exactly what happened to St. Louis FC in this game. They played pretty much about a solid 40 minutes, and then right towards the end of the half, just a terrible turnover. Let's call it what it is. It was a very bad turnover by the newcomer Chad Bond. He got a little cute deep in his own midfield, tried to do some sort of kind of spin and step over move. He got made to pay the price for that due to the fact that he basically gave it right up to them, and they basically went right down and scored. Pace came out and tried to make the stop, but there was no availability for a save right there. But it was just a disappointing end to the half. So, okay, then you think, well, we're only 1-0 down. It's not the end of the world. You get an equalizer coming in the second half, and you're right back in the game. And instead, the wheels completely fall off. The defense starts to lose their handle. They can't necessarily find where their marks are. And then you give up a goal where it was a bad goal in terms of luck, because Pace probably had it covered the way that he was going, the original direction of the shot, and unfortunately it deflected off of one of the defenders. I believe it was Duty, but I'm not completely certain on that because I was watching the YouTube feed and the replays. Well, they did an overall decent job. Left something to be desired as well in terms of some of the angles that they showed. So I believe it deflected off Duty. Ultimately, it didn't matter because all of a sudden it's 2-0 in favor of Galaxy 2 before the half, and then all of a sudden it's almost that's all she wrote for St. Louis. They came out in the second half. They tried to get things going a little bit, but again, it was just too similar to what we saw last season in the fact that once things started going wrong, the team didn't necessarily find themselves able to overcome that. Now, as the season progresses, if they take the same path that they took last year, eventually they will learn how to make up for those kind of mistakes, because that's exactly what they did last season. but it's a little bit disappointing at this juncture of the season, despite the fact that it's a new year and you're still kind of getting used to the new teammates and everything, and those are somewhat of an excuse. It's disappointing that you're seeing the exact same problems come up at the beginning of this season that you saw last season. And just as an overall personal thing, I'm still not incredibly impressed with the fitness of this team. There just seems to be too many players who are either mentally disinterested or physically disinterested, because the color commentator made a couple points where he was giving St. Louis credit that they were closing down balls towards the end of the game, not giving up. I kind of disagree with that. I saw a lot of standing around. I saw a lot of, not necessarily heads down, but just bad body language. And it's too early in the season to have something like that happen. It's by no means necessary at the end of the world. It's only 2 games in. But for whatever reason, and this is probably just something within my own mind, and hopefully the team completely proves me wrong, but for some reason I just don't feel comfortable with St. Louis FC moving to the Western Conference. Now obviously they were given no choice, but in terms of having playoff hopes, for some reason I just think it would have been a little bit better to stay in the East than go West. Unfortunately, that has been the hand that St. Louis FC has been dealt. So 2 games in, they're not necessarily playing very well. The new players, it's going to take a little bit of time to really see what they've got. I do like this Zuma who's playing up top. I think that he will be capable of scoring, but he seems to be really kind of acclimating himself to his surroundings right now and hasn't been given the opportunity to do a whole lot yet. The surrounding pieces, again, I think it's just going to take a little bit of time to form that cohesive unit. Hopefully it doesn't take as much time as it did last season, because those early points dropped in the season really ended up costing St. Louis a potential playoff push later in the year. But plenty of time between now and then to worry about each individual game, which we will do right here on The View from the Midwest. But that'll wrap it up for this game. I hope you enjoyed that. Comment, rate, and subscribe. I've got a lot of different videos going up. I've got NHL videos regarding the NHL Central Division and obviously the St. Louis Blues and where everything fits there. I've also done a couple movie reviews as well if you want to check those out. Obviously, I've got the Batman v Superman review up, spoilers and non-spoilers, so if you want to check that out, see what I thought of that as well, subscribe to my channel and you can get all the videos that I've got going up there. But until the next time, until the next St. Louis FC game, I will see you then.